physical and hand therapy. And we're going to be talking today about enhancing brain health. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Holli O'Kelly. I'm a physical therapist with IRG. I've been treating for almost 8 years. And over the course of my career, I've gone from being more on the sports orthopedic side to now venturing more into, I treat a lot more spine, neck, post-concussion, vestibular, like dizziness type conditions. So I treat a wide variety of things, but my passion has definitely moved in that direction, and especially into the direction of lifestyle medicine, which I'm excited to introduce you guys to shortly. And I'll let Julie introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Julie Mahler, and I'm a registered dietitian here at IRG. And I see patients with all sorts of different diagnoses. I love to work with people and help them meet all of their health goals. And I'm so excited for tonight to talk more about nutrition and its relationship with health, with healthy brains. So thanks for being here.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sean Porter. I am, in fact, not Mark Watson. I have a bit more hair than he does. But I am the COO at ABI Wellness. So I work really closely with Mark. My background is in neuroscience. So I'm a neuroscientist who has done a lot of research on concussion, brain injury, and now more recently into the long COVID component, and really looking at cognitive recovery, cognitive training, and the impact that can have on quality of life. And I'm now part of ABI Wellness and am motivated to helping improve the quality of care and helping clinicians help individuals get back their brain function as much as possible, regardless of injury or illness or other aging or other issues that are impacting their ability to do so. So really excited to talk about brain health and our platform and the IRG Brain Fit program. So we're going to start with talking about brain fog and what is brain fog. And that's something that I think it's a term that I think everyone's heard about recently over the last couple of years, with particularly with long COVID. And so it's a pretty arbitrary term. So we want to kind of first dig into that and really make sure everybody understands what are we talking about when we hear the term brain fog. And so it's not really a medical condition, as you can kind of tell from the name, but it is a term that's used to describe symptoms that can affect your ability to think. So if it can lead you to feeling confused, disorganized, challenges with focus or finding the right words. That's all kind of those symptoms that surround brain fog. Go to the next slide. Thank you. And so what does it really feel like if you have brain fog? Because it's really wide ranging and it affects people differently. So it can feel like you have trouble focusing, difficulty being attentive, trouble remembering familiar details like names, places or words that you interact with on a daily basis. You now struggle to process information. It can present itself as fatigue. You can get significantly more fatigued from things that didn't bother you before, whether that was physical or more of a mental exercise that's really impacting you a lot more. And you can also lose your train of thought. And so when people describe it, as you can see from that big list, that varies quite a bit. So what are the more common, what are the most common ways that it's described? So this little polka dot chart shows kind of the more frequent ways that people talk about it. So one of the most common is the concentration, the distractibility, your inability to be attentive. Another big one is executive function or cognitive struggle. Difficulty communicating, and fatigue is another one. And so as you can see, it's kind of overlapping a lot in different areas, but really wide-ranging terms to describe it. And so what causes brain fog? So it's not really well defined still, but it can present itself following a lot of different illnesses. So long COVID or COVID-19 is one in particular, but it can also show up from autoimmune diseases like celiac disease, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis, but also after cancer treatment or after a brain injury or other lifestyle factors as well can lead to brain fog. And so stress, burnout, lack of sleep, hormonal changes, these can all lead to these symptoms of brain fog. Oh, I lost you guys there for a second. So
Yeah.
the question we now have is, what can we do about that? So brain fog is a problem. We're all recognizing that. And what can we do? And luckily, we have some great people here to talk about that. So we're going to start with Julie, I think, to help us understand what are some of the things that we can do to address brain fog?
Yes, thank you, Sean. And so I'm going to be focusing on the nutrition part of things. And so we can go to the next slide. And so first, I really like to focus on what you want to do more of. I think so often when people talk about or think about trying something different, they think so much about restriction and eating less of things. And instead, it's like, hey, what do we want you to eat? Or what will help your brain health? And so that is those whole and minimally processed foods. And that's vegetables, fruits, whole grains, beans and lentils, and nuts and seeds. But I don't want you to feel like it has to take a long time to prepare these types of foods. And so if we go to the next slide, we can look a little bit more specifically at. So let's say you do make a salad. You don't have to make it from scratch. I mean, and you can if that's what you prefer, but you could buy a salad kit. But if I bought one, I would look at that nutrition facts label. In fact, I would more look at, hey, why don't I just get like the bag of spinach or the bag of mixed greens and then build it from there? And if I didn't have much time, I might take like baby tomatoes or baby peppers or celery or little carrots, so you can chop those up quite quickly and you have just this gorgeous salad and all sorts of phytonutrients and antioxidants that are so helpful for the brain. I'd recommend you try choosing whole grains and whole foods over refined. And if you're someone that says, gosh, I just hate like all those nuts and seeds on the Dave's bread, well, maybe then try like a white whole wheat bread, or maybe you could try more like one made by France or Oro wheat that's more smooth. And I know so often I have patients that tell me, well, no, if I can't be perfect, if you know, it's such black and white thinking that if I don't have the perfect bread, then I'm just going to have the white bread. And it's like, you know, there's a whole lot of gray that we can live in terms of nutrition. And I think people are so much more successful when they do that, thinking, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. If I make one change, that will help my brain like that. And there is absolutely research that supports that. And whole grains would also include like whole wheat tortillas or whole wheat pasta or brown rice or quinoa. You know, there's a lot of different options out there. And if you're like, oh my gosh, there's no way I'm going to cook these whole grains, they take way too long, then buy the ones that are frozen and already cooked for you at the grocery store, and that would save a lot of time. Snacking on a handful of nuts, or I think nuts or seeds can be such a great addition to salads or to cereals, or sprinkle chia seeds on top of your toast in the morning. That there's a lot of different ways to add maybe a teaspoon or even a half a teaspoon to some of these foods we eat on a regular basis, and you get that fiber and you get so much nutrition without really changing or adding a lot of time. Lastly, beans, and a lot of people will say, gosh, beans take a lot of time, or they you know, they make me have a lot of gas. And what you could do is think, hey, maybe I can try a can of beans. I first put it in a colander and put a bunch of water over the top to kind of get rid of some of that salt. You can buy no sodium beans, which I think are great. In my personal opinion, I'm like, yeah, I use that for like chilies where you're adding a lot of different flavors. But if you're going to use it just to sprinkle on top of a salad, or I might sprinkle, like if I'm putting a tortilla with maybe some chicken and maybe a little bit of hummus or pesto, and I might sprinkle a few beans and a bunch of veggies in that. Then I want a little bit of flavor in that bean, and you reduce the sodium by like 40% if you put it through a colander. So that's just an idea for that. And beans freeze great. So maybe you can't go through a whole can in a week, but if you go through half a can, that's just adding that much more nutrition to those different products that you're eating. So we can go on to the next slide. And so there are foods we want to avoid that have absolutely been shown to decrease our cognitive function, and those are the ultra processed foods. But I wanted to kind of define that a little bit more, is that if a food is minimally processed, that means it could be canned tomatoes or canned beans or frozen vegetables or frozen fruit. So that those all are fine, because sometimes people get a little bit confused. It's the ones that have all sorts of sodium and refined white flour, or a lot of saturated fats, or a lot of added sugars. Those are the ones that we're trying to eat less of. And I'm not really a dietitian that talks about cut it out, like you cannot have it, because I think the minute that I say that, then that's all the person wants to eat. And I think that's a natural response. So instead, if you tell yourself, I can have that, but I'm going to have it less often, or I'm going to have it only on special occasions, or I'm going to have half a portion, or I'm going to split it with a friend, or I'm going to eat half now and take the rest home with me, that these are things that I think can be more successful for you and can also reduce your intake of some of these ultra processed foods that can be so highly addictive, and people can like them so much, but trying to reduce that intake to help their brain health. So next slide. Now, I wanted to bring up the Mediterranean diet because there is no question there's been a lot of research done on this specific diet, and also on the Mind diet, which I will bring up in a second. But the Mediterranean diet, because of the high antioxidant content, it has anti-inflammatory compounds, it has a lot of fatty it has the healthy fats in it, that it is great for your cognitive health. And kind of like what I talked about before, you're kind of looking for those foods, eating more of the vegetables, the fruits, the beans, the lentils, the nuts, the seeds, the whole grains, and less of the processed foods, that will help your brain. And so I just wanted to bring up a specific diet because I think sometimes general recommendations can be a little bit confusing for people. And at the end of the slideshow, I have a lot of different recipe books out there that you can check out and see, hey, yeah, maybe these are some things that I want to try. And as it says here, it's not a strict plan. It's just more of a way of eating. So next slide, please. And I have a handout that we can go to the next slide that I think it can be helpful for people, because so often, if we look at that gray area again, is maybe you want to try to make one change. You don't have to change everything. Maybe, tomorrow you'll be like, okay, the one thing I'm going to do, or the one thing I'm going to do this week is I'm going to add seafood. I'm going to eat it twice a week. The serving size is like the deck of cards or the size of the palm of your hand. So I'm not asking you to eat a lot. I would love it if you could do something high in omega-3s. That's very anti-inflammatory. And that could be salmon or tuna. Tuna has like half the omega-3s as salmon. It could be the mackerel, herring, those types of fish. And to see, hey, can I do that? Would that be something that would be possible for me? Or you could look at any of these tips on here. Each one of these is part of the Mediterranean diet. Which one thing could you try this week and see if you can do it consistently? And then once you got the hang of that one, then you can try the next one. And I think so often people feel like time is the thing that gets in their way. And I say, try to simplify. For example, let's say you want to try oatmeal. Well, it's okay to have instant oats. I mean, perhaps it's not as good as rolled oats, but it's so much better than so many other options. And then maybe you'd want to add a little bit of a protein to it. Could you add, do you like cow's milk or soy milk? Or if you like a plant-based milk, make sure it has protein added. Or maybe you would have some Greek yogurt kind of on top or on the side. Maybe you could add some nuts or seeds to add a little bit of texture, maybe some dried fruit, or a little bit of a sweetener to get some of that flavor profile. I think pumpkin is nice through an oatmeal, and then you get all that vitamin A. And you can do that quite quickly. Within a few minutes, you could have a nice oatmeal. And if you wanted more of a savory grain type dish, you could do those frozen whole grains. You would buy those with canned beans, with frozen vegetables. All you need is a microwave and a stovetop, and you have your grain bowl in 5 minutes. And so feeling okay about buying some of these foods that are already quite a bit of the cooking has been taken care of for you, but you're still ending up with a product that looks very much like how it began. So next slide. And then the MIND diet, all that is, it's just a combination of the Mediterranean diet with the DASH diet. And what the DASH diet is the dietary approaches to stop hypertension, but very, very similar diets. The DASH diet has more of a focus on reducing sodium intake, which can be quite anti-inflammatory. And I keep bringing that up because that's very good for the brain if we can get these anti-inflammatories going. And so next slide, please. If you're interested in the MIND diet, then it's kind of very similar to the Mediterranean, as you can imagine. But I think the biggest difference is that the focus is more on specific foods that have been shown, I think, through some clinical research. I think there needs to be a lot more research in this area that can help with cognitive function. And I want you to feel like if you already have some cognitive decline, whether it be a little bit of dementia, just the beginning stages, that these diets are very helpful at any point. Like, it's not only about prevention, it's also about, even if you're in the middle of it, that it can also be helpful. And that's clinical research is showing that. So it's just so exciting, the potential of what food can do for the brain. We can go to the next slide, because I thought it would be helpful for you just to see an example. Because again, the MIND diet is more of an eating pattern. It's not these very specific recommendations, but one version I have listed here. And like those green leafy vegetables are very high in lutein. And we see as lutein increases in the brain that we see improved cognitive function with that. And so then, of course, the berries have been over and over again to be very helpful for brain health. But then you'll see the limited intake is very, very specific, because that's part of it. You're trying to eat more of some foods and you're trying to eat less of other foods. And when you're just at the beginning stages, then I say try to do one thing at a time and feel like you're making progress that way. So let's see, next slide. And I think now we're ready for Holli's portion of this. And thanks so much for listening. And if you have any questions, I think we're going to get some time for questions at the end.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to talk more about kind of the physical, or like the side that you would think of when you're going to physical therapy. So we'll go to the next slide. What I'm talking on is mostly the concept of lifestyle medicine. Let's go to the next slide. And lifestyle medicine, it's a medical intervention. A lot of different types of practitioners use this, whether it's physicians, physician assistants, physical therapists, even personal trainers. There's lifestyle coaches out there, but it all revolves around using evidence-based interventions to treat through 6 different pillars, which are whole food rich diet, like Julie just talked about, physical activity, restorative sleep, stress management, avoidance of risky substances, and positive social connections. So when we're using lifestyle medicine, we're educating on all of these areas, but we're also kind of coaching you through how to make goals and set goals and be able to achieve the changes that you want to see, and working on addressing the barriers that, if you can sit there and think right off the top of your head a bunch of reasons of why you can't do this, like, that's our job, is to sit with you and help coach you through that. So let's go to the next slide. So we'll talk mostly about the physical activity part in today's session. So any kind of physical activity is beneficial. Aerobic activity, which is more like just increasing heart rate and breathing. And then there's also resistance training, which is where you are pushing a force. So that would be more like weightlifting or weight training. But you've probably heard the term sitting is the new smoking, and that's not just a fun thing to say. That's actually, been proven by research, is that sedentary lifestyle does, change your body physically and your brain also, just the structure of your brain physically, kind of in the same way that smoking does. So it is a big deal. And we'll go to the next slide. So interesting fact is that, with the aging population, cases of dementia worldwide are expected to triple by 2050. But a third of those cases are considered to be preventable through modifiable lifestyle factors. Next slide. Oh, thank you. So here's one example. There's a study that compared, they took 160 adults that were 55 years plus, and they put them in 3 groups. One group was just doing aerobic exercise, one was just doing the DASH diet, and one was doing both of those combined. They found that the aerobic exercise group, there was significant improvements in executive function, which is the cognitive function, but not with just the DASH diet alone. But all of the groups, DASH exercise and combined, all the groups showed great improvements in heart disease risk factors. But the most significant improvements came from doing the diet and the exercise together. They saw significant improvements in memory, executive function. And when we say that, that includes like planning, organization, initiating tasks, focusing, self-monitoring, response speed, like anything to do with thinking, that's your executive function. Cool. We'll go to the next slide. So these are kind of the general recommendations of exercise, kind of by age group. We see, our preschoolers, which I am a mom of preschoolers, and continuous daily exercise. Yes, we are born ready to move. We should be moving continuously when we're small. When you get into the children and adolescent stage, those kids should be seeing 60 plus minutes a day of vigorous exercise. And then adults, we should be doing anywhere from 150 to 300 minutes of moderate intensity or 75 to 150 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise per week. So moderate intensity is the kind of exercise that you do where you can still talk, but you couldn't sing. Like you're breathing hard enough that you could still talk to someone, but it's kind of, it's a little bit labored, but you're not so relaxed that you could break out into a song. So 150 minutes, that means that you're doing, 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, ideally. And then again, that's where PT comes in. If you're not sure where to start or how to start, ask a PT. We'll go to the next slide. So let's just kind of touch on the benefits of exercise for the brain. So big one when it comes to brain health is that exercise reduces inflammation in the brain, and inflammation is strongly linked to cognitive dysfunction. One of the ways this happens is that, exercise decreases obesity, right? It decreases our body fat overall, and our visceral body fat, which is kind of the body fat that we store primarily in our abdomen, that fat stores substances that increase inflammation. One of those is cytokines. So you feel cytokines when you're sick. So when you're sick, you are lethargic, you kind of want to be alone, you might be moody, you might have difficulty concentrating. So those are symptoms of inflammation. And the same thing happens with sedentary lifestyle. So exercise helps to reduce that in multiple ways. It improves our brain insulin sensitivity. So it protects your brain from high blood sugar. If you do decide to indulge in that treat, participating in daily physical activity helps to protect the brain from any damage from blood sugar, which is especially relevant for vascular dementia. It increases the substances in the brain responsible for forming and repairing new neural connections, which means your brain is more plastic. It's more pliable, it's more adaptable, which means it's more resilient to anything that's going on in your life. It actually increases the size of your brain. People who are more active actually have a thicker gray matter. So that's like your called your cerebral cortex. And the integrity of the white matter, which are the nerves that connect parts of the brain to each other, are also stronger. It's going to improve your cognitive function, learning, and memory. They've done studies that show that if you're learning something new while walking, you're going to retain it better than learning something new while sitting, which is pretty interesting. There are, low-grade brain inflammation has been correlated to a few conditions like obesity, depression, and chronic pain. And you'll notice that a lot of those 3 things kind of tend to group together too clinically. Interesting fact, in the obese population, there is a 20 to 30% prevalence of depression, whereas in the general population, it's only 5 to 10%. So there definitely is something to that. We'll go to the next slide. So exercise, again, a few more benefits. It improves mood. It has an antidepressive effect. So exercise increases the concentration of dopamine. One fun fact is that it actually, a 6-mile run stimulates the release of endorphins that's equivalent to 10 milligrams of morphine. So exercise is potent. It's underutilized. I always tell people, my patients that are coming to me with like low back pain or knee pain, before you reach for that ice pack or that pill, like the first thing you should do is go for a walk, because that gives you that quick burst of dopamine and endorphins. And it just promotes blood flow, which, inflammation is just chemicals. So if you have inflammatory chemicals circulating around your knee or around your low back, going for a walk and pumping that blood throughout your body basically just flushes it away, and it's going to give you at least some short-term relief. Exercise also will improve sleep and reduce stress, and we'll talk about that a little more in a moment. Yeah, there we go. So research shows that sleeping, the ideal amount is about 7 hours of sleep. There are some people who are on maybe a little bit higher or a little bit lower, but on average, 7 hours was what's considered needed for the health benefits of sleep. If you feel like you have insomnia, sleep apnea, your partner says that you're snoring and making noises all night, urinary issues, like these are all things that interfere with sleep. So definitely seek help quickly. If it is urinary issues, pelvic floor therapy can be very helpful. We have several of those providers at our clinic. If you're getting interrupted by bathroom breaks, that would be a good place to start. But decreased sleep is associated with a wide variety of symptoms: increased risk of depression, increased risk of high blood pressure and heart attack, decreased immunity, dysregulated metabolism, decreased memory, and increased mental fatigue. Another fun fact, I like the fun facts. There is statistically the Monday after daylight savings time, when we lose an hour's sleep, that Monday there's a statistical increase in the amount of heart attack visits on that Monday. So Mondays in general are the highest, are the day of the week where the most heart attacks occur. Just think about stress. Your week is starting, but specifically that Monday after daylight savings time, it is even higher. And on the contrary, the Tuesday after you fall back and you gain an hour of sleep, it actually dips. So that really speaks to the importance of sleep and how even an hour difference can really affect your health. Okay, we'll go to the next one. So a few things happen during sleep. That is when your brain is reorganizing and recharging itself. It allows for more learning and efficiency with thinking the next day. It gives your brain time to remove the waste that has accumulated during the day, which is like byproducts of cellular processes that are occurring. Memories are stored while you're sleeping, and it helps to regulate hormones, which in turn helps to reduce stress and the risk of depression. And we'll touch here on stress as well. So stress, it makes it a lot more difficult to multitask and adapt, especially with the aging brain. So that's why we see people, when they experience the death of a spouse, there's also an associated risk of cognitive decline, because that's something that your brain is having to constantly process. So stress management is a very important part of brain health. Physical activity helps, but so does meditation, laughter, and socialization. Stress also does influence pain. When you're stressed, you are in what we call fight or flight mode. So your body is in this constant state of anticipating something to potentially go wrong. So your nervous system does become more sensitive to things. Kind of like a car alarm, a car alarm should only go off if someone's bashing the window in. But when you're in a state of constant stress, it's like having a car alarm that goes off when you just touch it. It's just very, very sensitive. And when your body is kind of in that state, physical pain is going to increase, sleep quality goes down, and inflammation goes up. That includes inflammation in the brain. And we'll just quickly go through a few other lifestyle factors, but avoiding tobacco, that's kind of a no-brainer. That, like we talked about, smoking and vaping are bad for the heart and brain health, and they do change the shape of the brain and thin the actual gray matter in your brain. Social life is very important. And if you think of your brain like a muscle, you strengthen muscles by using them. Same thing with the brain. Socialization is a great way to use your brain. It stimulates attention, it stimulates memory networks. Think about how much more active your brain is when you're talking with a friend and reminiscing and thinking about the future versus sitting alone by yourself. So definitely social life is encouraged, and that's something that we do set goals for when we're seeing people in the clinic. And kind of along that note, learning. Think about trying something new, learning a new thing, problem solving, even the crossword puzzles or Sudoku puzzles that are difficult for you to do. Those are also great ways to stimulate the brain. And then, learning a new hobby. So that's something, again, just another idea to kind of stimulate the brain and help keep it active throughout your days. And one more thing that people sometimes don't think about is your hearing. So as you get older, hearing typically does worsen, and poor hearing is associated with an increased risk of loss of cognition. So research shows that if you do have hearing loss, correcting the problem can help preserve brain function. So if you can correct a hearing problem, definitely do pursue that, not just for the sake of being able to hear, but also for your brain health. So I'm going to let Sean take over again with kind of the next steps. Again, IRG has partnered with ABI Wellness to enhance brain health in our community here in Washington. So I'll let him kind of elaborate on the details of that program.
Thanks, Holli. And thank you, Julie. Learned a lot already. So I'm excited to go to the next slide and talk about the IRG BrainFit program. And so as Holli said, ABI Wellness is a small company that has built a platform to help clinics like IRG bring a more standardized approach to brain health and to be able to provide a personalized approach to their clients to see better outcomes. And so you can go to the next slide. Our platform is called the BEARS platform, which stands for the Brain Enhance and Recovery System platform. And so it's, as I mentioned, we license it out to clinics like IRG, and we are now, we have clinics across North America that are offering this program. And what the clinics are really telling us is that it's really been helping address a gap in care that's existed in terms of addressing cognitive function and providing a structured approach to really helping individuals restore cognitive function that's been impacted by injury or illness.
Thinking.
I froze for a sec.
Yeah,
sorry about that. Okay. We can move to the next one. I was just talking, Shannon O'Kelly's at the bottom there. But so the BEARS platform, so we really built it to help improve. Our goal is to really help improve quality of life by through our platform, which helps address those cognitive functions that we're talking about, regardless of really how they were impacted. And so I think we've talked about brain fog, we've talked about the nutrition and the lifestyle factors, and there are a lot of different ways that cognitive function can get impacted, and whether it's brain injury, concussion, learning disabilities, cognitive decline through aging, brain fog from illness, like as we discussed at the beginning, or really if you're really just looking to strengthen your cognitive function as well. And so what we learned today, I think, from what Julie and Holly have talked about, is that an interdisciplinary model is really helpful. There's a lot of different things that we can combine together that really stack on top of each other to kind of create a super powered approach to addressing brain health. And so that's really what we've tried to build with this platform. And that can help increase the outcomes for the individuals and also avoid the need to kind of see multiple people for your brain health care. And so you can go to the next slide. Oh, there's one other talk about. What we find also is that with clinics that utilize our platform, typically prior to using our platform, the average satisfaction with current brain and mental health programs are about 50%. And with our platform, the clinics are reporting about a 96% satisfaction rate. So we're seeing really good outcomes and also really high satisfaction. And so what is the Bears platform? So it's a cloud-based solution that provides assessment for the clinician and for the client, as well as a automated program creation that creates a personalized program for each person that meets them where they're at and also adjusts over time to continuously challenge them to stimulate that brain, that cognitive function and that brain health to help push them forward at their own pace to improve quality of life overall. And so it's accessed on multiple different platforms, typically on a laptop with Wi-Fi connection. You're able to engage in it kind of at your own pace under the supervision of your PT at IRG, ideally. And what we find here is that through this platform, we're able to track a lot of data in real time. And so typically in a lot of care, it's you go and see your therapist or your PT or your doctor, and then they take notes, and then you go and do some more work, and then they slowly get that reporting together. We have all that data available in real time, and so we're trying to maximize the outcome. And so we want to make sure that you're maximizing the benefits that you get through care by making adjustments to the program as necessary as quickly as possible. And through all of that, what we see are really improved outcomes, both in the clinic as well as for the patient. Next slide. Thank you. So this slide was supposed to have a whole bunch of pictures, but you just have to use your imagination a little bit. But I do want to talk about our 4-pillar approach. And so the first pillar is aerobic exercise. And Holly did a really great job talking about all the benefits of exercise on the brain. Sorry, we're going to be here for a little bit. So for aerobic exercise, Holly talked about the benefits in for long-term exercise. We took that research and we thought, okay, let's pair that with the cognitive training, and let's kind of super power that cognitive training by taking advantage of these benefits of exercise and put it directly beside the cognitive. And so when you exercise, it increases the blood flow to the brain, and it increases a lot of these neurotransmitters like dopamine and everything else that Holly talked about that help with neuroplasticity. And so by engaging in exercise, about 20 minutes of moderate intensity exercise, immediately before doing a challenging task like our cognitive training program, you're able to see better improvements, significantly more changes in a shorter amount of time. And so we have that, and then we go into our cognitive training platform, which has been used around the world for about 40 years in a wide range of clinical populations. And it's a really adaptable, it's really well designed task that's really adaptable, that targets the associated area of the brain. And so your brain has a lot of different cognitive functions. It's receiving information from all over the place, whether it's stuff you're reading, hearing, feeling. And your brain's job is really to take that information and interpret it and provide an appropriate response. And often, whether it's with brain fog or an injury or it's aging, our brain starts to struggle with that. And either we struggle paying attention to all that information, or we have trouble processing it in an efficient way. And then it's harder to keep up with conversation or other aspects of our life, or we have to work harder to do that. And so we have an exercise that really strengthens that core function that allows you to then engage in a lot of those activities of daily living and activities that are important to you in a really more effortless way. Our third pillar is mindfulness. And so we know with a lot of research has come out to show the benefit of regular mindfulness practice. And so that's what we built into the platform is tracked mindfulness practice that you do in combination of these other two pillars to help improve focus, attention, but also help reduce stress, because that also really impacts your ability to engage not only in our cognitive training, but in everyday life. So by working through this in the Brain Fit program, you'll learn the different benefits of meditation, find a practice that you enjoy. There's so many different types of meditation, and there's so many different ways that you can engage in it and find something meaningful to you that you enjoy doing that will help you maintain that into the future and really tie into that lifestyle medicine that Holli was talking about. And then the last pillar is interdisciplinary tracking. And so we collect data throughout your entire time through the IRG Brain Fit program to look at goals and look at progress and look at engagement, because what we want to see is really high engagement and be able to pair that with your goals that you're achieving on a regular basis and adjust the program as necessary. Maybe you're moving through really quickly and make it more challenging for you. Maybe a particular area is a struggle for you, and Holli or another therapist at IRG can adjust the program so that it's more appropriate to you. Because we want to make sure that as you go through the program, it's right where you need to be so that you can get the most out of it. We don't want you struggling. We don't too much. We want it to be challenging, but we don't want you to be struggling. And then that way you get the most benefit out of this. And then we're also able to provide reporting to share with you, your family, your other care providers to show your progress as you progress through the program. Okay, now we can move to the next slide. Okay, so as I said at the beginning, my background is as a neuroscientist, so I get all excited when we talk about research. And this, we did a couple studies at the onset of this, and I'm a little biased, but I was the author, involved with the first study when we looked at how this program what the potential of this program was with people with brain injury or impaired cognitive function. And so this was before I was with ABI. I was at UBC up here in Vancouver, Canada. And we looked at the potential for this program to improve cognition in individuals who'd had chronic traumatic brain injury. And at the onset, we had thought that people with chronic brain injury wouldn't be able to engage in a program like this. And even if they could, we really wouldn't see much benefit. And surprisingly to the whole research team, we had really strong engagement, better engagement than we typically expect in any other research population. And not only that, it had a significant impact on not only their cognitive function, but also the organization of their brains. And so what this graph is showing is a bunch of bars, but I want to focus on the fluid and crystallized. So these are two different forms of intelligence. Crystallized intelligence is ingrained facts that we know. So we know that a dog is a dog. We know that the sky is blue. Those things are just known facts for us. Fluid intelligence is something that changes all the time. It's our ability to take new information in and process that and come up with an output that's important. And so typically, fluid intelligence is not impacted by cognitive training programs. But what we found with this study was that these individuals showed significant changes in their fluid intelligence that paired with the reorganization of that prefrontal cortex. So the brain became more efficient and more effective at this core process of processing information effectively. So this was really exciting and really spurred the research team on to do a second study, which is study number 2. And this was really focusing the study population to just concussion. And with this study, we found, again, changes in the brain, changes in behavior, similar to the first study, but also significant improvements in mental health when we added in the exercise, the mindfulness, and some counseling, which was really exciting to see as well. And what these two studies really, for ABI, really inspired us to, okay, now we need to move this clinically. And that's when I joined, because I was so moved by the power of this program and what it could do. So I joined the team, and then we launched it clinically. Okay, next slide. And so since we launched it clinically, we keep concussion, stroke, aging. If you lump all those people together, their average return to work rate is about 40%. When we look at our data set combined like that, we have a return to work rate of 77%, which is a significant improvement. And if we separate it out to really only look at those with concussion or mild traumatic brain injury, we have a 91% return to work rate, which is significantly more than we typically see when individuals are struggling with that cognitive piece. And we believe the reason for this is that we're really addressing the cognitive issue, and we're strengthening those neural connections and those core cognitive functions that are important to go back to work instead of work.
You're
Am I
back.
back?
You're back.
Okay. We can go to the next slide. Okay. So not everybody wants to return to work, though. So that can't be our only thing that we care about when we look at this. And as I stated at the beginning, what we're really trying to do is improve quality of life. And so we've built in a quality of life assessment as well into the platform that looks at your physical health, your emotional health, your cognitive health, as well as your social health, because we know that's very important, as Holli mentioned. And what we're finding is that across every single metric of quality of life, individuals that go through the program report clinically meaningful changes in each metric.
It's the Canadian Wi-Fi. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, he's not coming back.
Did we lose him? Let's give it one more second.
Yeah, it looks like he just left, but he should join right back, hopefully.
Okay.
He may just be rejoining. We have like one more slide, guys, then we're
there he
gonna open
is.
to questions. Yeah.
You're muted, Sean.
I am muted. Sorry about that. I'm back. Okay.
He's back.
Last slide before questions. Yes. Sorry about that. Can you go to the next slide? Sorry.
Oh.
Okay, so the last part is just as part of our platform, we have an automated assessment pathway. So we have our intake report that provides a good starting point to compare your outcomes in the progress report. And also throughout the program, we generate engagement reports that can be shared with everybody that's important to your care to show how you're engaging and how you're progressing through the program in.
Oh no.
You're back.
Okay, I'm all finished, I think, unless you didn't hear that last bit, but hopefully you caught most of it.
I think we got the gist of it.
Okay, let's open it up to questions and then hopefully.
Yeah, if you guys have questions, feel free to ask away. Just unmute yourself and ask. And then if you always, if you think of something after this is over, you can also email marketing@irgpt.com. Why don't you put that on the next slide, Jensen, just so they can see the email address. Yeah.